Check, quick sound check. Can everybody hear me loud and clear? Check. Okay, you guys do got me here. We're gonna try to figure out what's going on with the audio with Coach Paul. He should be back in just a second. For whatever reason, my audio was sending out to you guys, but not sending to Coach Paul. But we will figure that out, and I think he's just gonna try to rejoin here. But welcome everyone to At the Buzz Hour Market Recap. This is your first time here. I'm Coach Jay. Coach Paul should be here in a minute. The goal of this segment is to review what happened in the markets for the day, see how we could have taken advantage of those opportunities while managing our risk. We may talk about some markets that you have not traded before, but we believe our goal as traders is to identify opportunity and see how we could take advantage of those opportunities while managing our risk. A little mixed up here with those audio issues. If this is our first time meeting, I'm Coach Jay. I've been a Top Step Performance Coach since June of 2023. Been trading for the past 13 years and in the futures markets for the past 6. Coach Paul, my wingman, should be back in a minute. He'll introduce himself, but you are all the chat. Tell us how you did today. Were you up on the day, down on the day? Maybe you stayed out of the choppy price action for the day. Let me know how it went, and we will get into the markets. Uh, and on the side, I'm going to try to check in on Coach Paul. But if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Andrew, our wonderful moderator, is going to send those over to me. O'Keys, you caught that long. That was a nice trade. We'll talk about it. Blue Boy down for the day, up 528 on one XFA, took a payout on the other. Okay, good stuff. Let's see what else we got here. 2 trades both day, chopped up like a hog. um, was an interesting trading day for sure. Was an interesting trading day for sure. We know we had some news out. Of course, today is Thursday, so we did. Today's Thursday, right? Today is Thursday. Sometimes it's hard to remember what day of the week it is, but we had non-farm pay. No, we had unemployment numbers out this morning. Initial jobless claims came in at 219,000. Expectation was 213,000. Of course, we had some comments out of the White House. I'm going to be honest; it's very hard to keep up with all of them. I know we had some headlines out of Iran, um, and some comments from the president. I think a lot of what I do is, after the fact, I'll turn on CNN and see what was said for the day. But we saw some volatility today in the markets for sure. But we also had Amazon earnings. Amazon earnings right after the close there did have those numbers up. So let's just take a look at those. Give 1 second. Speaking of hogs, that was a nice move today. Cattle did them. So D, cattle was the first trade I took today. Shout out to Coach Hoop, who's been just calling it out. And while the equities were chopping around, I took that cattle short armed it, but I got a short rib out of it, but I was happy nonetheless. Let's see. Got trading view charts up here. Amazon numbers are out. Uh, Earnings per share, dollar and 86 cents. Estimates were $1.50. Net sales 187,000, 187.79 billion. Estimates were 187.32 billion. Um, these don't look like bad numbers. These don't look like bad numbers. I think what I saw as a headline is the forward guidance doesn't look great. Um, Amazon's forward guidance misses estimates, so that's probably why we're seeing some of this sell off because the Q4 numbers look decent. Um, but of course, we know that anything can happen and change with these numbers. When we hear the conference call, we may get a little bit of a change um, in what we see there. But for right now, Amazon is selling off. Um, let's get into the markets. There are 35 different markets that we can trade with Top Step accounts, not just the equities. And to the downside today, we had silver down 0.97%. Cattle down 2.17%, and micro Ethereum futures, our biggest percentage mover to the downside, 2.38%. To the upside, we had heating oil. Okay, I don't know what you're doing here. Just pretty there. Um, Heating oil up 0.84%. RBOB gasoline futures. Shout out to D. Really nice trade on that segment that you had today. When it looked like nothing else was moving, D was trading RBOB and a really nice trade up 1.09%. And wheat futures, our biggest percentage mover to the upside at 2.8%. To talk about our big four, we had the NASDAQ up 0.37%, S&P's up 0.17%. Uh, gold, where's gold? Where's gold on this list? Gold down 0.45% and crude oil down 0.72% to round out our big four. Uh, all right, Coach Paul is going to join us in the chat. We'll try to figure out what the audio issues were a little bit after this. But I have a micro NASDAQ chart up here. We usually start with the equities. Um, for the traders that had a good day or didn't have a good day, whatever side you were on, we've talked about this a little bit before, where we pulled up the four up for four different markets and said, which one resonates with you the best? Who here had a great day and is a range bound trader? Because this is the exact price action that you want to see. I'm looking at a 30-minute chart here on the NASDAQ. Um, looking at a 30-minute chart here on the NASDAQ, we have uh, last night's open. Last night's open, this 30-minute candle here. We talked a little bit about this late spike. We talked a little bit about this late spike here, where that we had yesterday, right? We talked about 765. Right, we talked about 765. If we go down to a shorter time frame chart, looking at a 3-minute, 765 was the high of that late spike, and call it 709 was the low of it. All right, so 765 here, 709's at the low. Right? It's not a coincidence in my mind. And feel however you want about volume. I know if we pull up a volume profile, there was a volume point of control right at 21,710 as well. But I'm framing out this area based on the volume that we had at the end of the day, and we held it in the overnight, came down and checked it this morning, right to that low, and that was pretty much the low on the day. Even this spike here. So range bound traders, this is exactly what you want to see. How you identify the range. All right. Thank you. This is why you need a co-pilot. This is why you need a co-pilot. I was just going with the flow. This is why you need a co-pilot. Thank you, chat. Sorry I didn't recognize that earlier. I'll put the chat right in front of my face. All right. Start over. Let's do it again. Flying blind out here. So we had yesterday's range. Thank you, D. Thank you, Anne Marie. I see your messages as well. We had yesterday's close, this volume spike here. So we framed this out 767s at the high, 710s at the low. Right. In the overnight session last night, starting here, we held above that 767 area. So you had some decent opportunities for longs. Last night, I know Dakota was looking at a long. Dakota took a long right around the 760 area and got out around 800s, or on this push up to 780s, he got out there. Had another decent opportunity up here. We pushed up to 820s, and I think he took the rest of his position off. But holding this volume, it really held all day, right? This morning, we came down, checked that level that ended up being volume point of control for the day. For yesterday, this was a volume point of control right around 710. We held it. We bounced off of there. And this was not the cleanest price action during the New York session. If we look at the 3-minute opening range now, from the New York session, once that 3-minute opening range prints, it was pretty choppy. VWAP did leave the range, but it was not convincing at all. We talked to the VIPs about this a little bit as well. Where this VWAP left the range, you could take this trade, but it's not as convincing, right? We've seen some convincing examples of this. I'll show another one in cattle today, but the angle of this line and how it flattens out in the rest of the day tells us that there's potential for a range bound day. Now, do we have a catalyst for range? We do. Tomorrow we have NFP. We know that's a big catalyst in the markets, and it's going to affect how the markets move. Is that what the markets are waiting for? Are the markets kind of just on pins and needles because anytime we get a tweet or something like that, it shakes us up? Whatever it is, we were range bound. So if you are a range bound trader, great opportunities for you here. High to low in this range, and the Nasdaq was about 100 points, and it's not those small ranges, right? It's not a 20-point range where it makes it difficult to even see an opportunity. There's decent opportunity here. For me personally, I stayed out of the Nasdaq throughout most of this because I know for myself and my trading style, I'm usually going to find myself somewhere in the middle of this range getting chopped up. Whether I'm shorting or getting long, I get chopped up around flat VWAP. Um, you could just say, hey, just trade away from it. My brain just doesn't work like that, right? We talked about the difference between Michael Jordan and Shaq. Uh, Playing the game two completely different ways. So, in order for me to see success, I have to stay out of this as much as possible. Um, and I could either look at a different market or wait for a cleaner opportunity. And that's the trade I want to talk about here, the one you might have seen us take right before Power Hour, where we were on with Sergio. Sergio took a long, and I really like this trade. And of course, we get the response, from chat. It's like, oh, how could you ever go long there? That's just stupid. Um, if you say that before, right here, longing the bottom of this range is the right trade, right? We stayed in this range. It's a tighter range than we had for the day, but we were in that price action for an hour and a half, right? So longing here, I don't think is a bad idea. Sergio was looking at this anchored VWAP here. A bad idea here is longing here and setting your stop or not trading with a stop. Right? That's a bad idea. But he had managed risk on the trade. The house account took that trade as well. Managed risk. Is anyone here right 100% of the time with their trades? You probably feel like you are sometimes, but we're not. Right? None of us are. But we're right when we can say, hey, if the market gets to this point, that's all I'm willing to pay for it. So that trade got stopped out. We saw some pretty nice volume coming in. And then my brain goes to, okay, we talked about high volume before. Is that volume sustainable? Right. So we got the initial volume spike. Is it sustainable? It is, right? The very next one, they did more volume, right? Volume waxing and waning. We talked about that. And then the next candle, we're waxing again, adding volume, but now we're getting to unsustainable territory, right? These volume candles with really no headline. I don't think there was news out or anything like that. This volume candle is close to the opening volume candle. My brain goes to what is the likelihood that that volume sustains the rest of this move, right? Can we actually continue from here? Uh, I'm seeing we're calling it a liquidity sweep, whatever we want to call it. Um, so we had some questions earlier in the week. What is the J trade you talk about? This is why I took this trade. So this volume I'm reading as unsustainable. I'm going to put the volume moving average back on here so we could take a look at it. Uh, let's see, volume moving average, red. All right. So this volume here was about 3 times the normal volume average. And then what I do with pretty much everything is attach a VWAP to it and see how the market responds. Where I got into this trade was pretty late. Now, the reason I'm calling this late, the anchored VWAP where it was not leaving the range, right? It held above 50% of the range, but it didn't leave. I took the initial long at 755, which is kind of late for how this continued. Now, I took it with micros, so I'm comfortable with my risk. My risk was somewhere below this 50%. We can see we almost hit it. I didn't set it exactly at 50%. I think I set it at 725 just to give it a little bit of space. But right idea. I preempted the trade. I was looking for a close above this area, above these 750s, the high of this candle. Candle looked like it was going to close, and in the last 5 seconds, we sold back into it. But I was comfortable with the trade, and then as long as that VWAP holds, I'm okay staying in this. Took that long with you. I was in earlier around 741. Stop loss was too tight and got stopped out. So Mo, I'm gonna ask you the question, and I get why your stops might be tight. Were you in minis or micros? That trade was a lot more comfortable to take with micros. I'll say it that way, right? Especially if you're in from 741. There's about 20 points you have to be comfortable with the drawdown. Let's look at what the ATR is. I'm on a 3-minute chart. 3-minute ATR is 18 points. So really, if we go with Coach Paul's suggestion, if you're in at 741, your stop needs to be 36 points. So your stop should be at 705. Look at how wide that stop is, and we might look at that and say, that's a lot of money. But if you're trading micros, it's not a whole lot, right? That's less than $100 with one micro, and that's a catastrophic stop most of the time, right? We've seen how many times a two ATR stop is so far out of the way with good trade location that you know it's not ever at risk of being hit. And if it is at risk, then we probably have the trade idea wrong, which is okay. Um, But, I get it, especially if you were trading minis, it was a tight stop. Coach Vince just said micros have been the way to go lately, tons of risk. So if we could see the P&L on this account, I scaled up to 5 micros in that position. Um, I was down, before taking that trade, I was down $150, right? So if we do 225, so it was a $300, $375 trade with 5 micros in an hour and 20 minutes, right? Which is pretty good. Yep. Bro's up $200. Bro's muted for 24 hours. Uh, just relax, man. Just relax. Um, uh, all right. So there was questions about how to manage a trade like this. Uh, just managing it as the market goes, right? If the market wants to uh, continue going, there are going to be areas that I'm looking at I need the market to settle above. Uh, For example, 21,800, right? I'm in a long from 55. I'm going to look at major levels first. 21,800. What does the market say about it? If we get a close above here, I don't want to set my stop if I'm trailing. I don't want to set my stop at 800 exactly because I want to give that major level some room to trade. But this candle that closed above 800, my stop is now going to go below that if I'm trailing, right? And then we had the high of where that volume started. So we had the high of where that volume started right here at 820s, right? That's where that sell off began. Once we get a candle that pushes above that, now I can trail below this candle, right? And just keep trailing as the market goes. I may be taking some of the position off, but you know, I want to secure some profits along the way because of the potential for this. If you were, we had some traders that were in the Coach J chat, and I was saying, this is a really nice move to the upside, but I can't remember who asked the question. I think it was Enslug who might have asked the question maybe last week. How do you, uh, can you use volume to confirm a move? If I'm reading this, what's the one issue with this move and the volume that goes along with it? What's the one issue with this move and volume going and the volume that goes along with it? Not growing. Right. Exactly, Rich. So there's a divergence here, right? This is probably the cleanest one directional move that we saw all day. It's 140 points. You would think that volume is increasing on that move. For half of it, the volume was decreasing, right? So price is doing something and it's great, but we talked about, these volume valleys, volume dips before. This is kind of a volume valley where we see descending volume, increasing price. There's potential for a move like this. So I want to secure some profits along the way because of the potential. If this volume was growing, I'd probably be adding to this position, right? But because volume was decreasing, I'm saying, okay, let's secure some profits because at any point we have potential for sellers to come in. Of course, this was Amazon earnings, um, where the number came out right at the close. But what's interesting about this is look at where it went to. Highest volume in the last 4 hours. Amazon earnings, news expedites the move right back down to VWAP and bounces from there. Um, Zombie rally, exactly, D. Zombie rally. So that's to me, that's what this is. Um, Zombie rally, news comes out, expedites the move, and then you could technically do the same thing here, right? Same trade, maybe. attach volume VWAP to this high volume, we hold around 50%. Once this VWAP starts to hold, price target is the high. So same trade idea there. Hopefully I explained why I took that one. Um, Bounces back up on low volume also. Yep. All right. Any other questions on that? Anything else on the equity markets? S&Ps, shout out to Coach Vince. He was in a very similar trade with the S&Ps. Um, and took his trade off at 6102. Pretty much the same thing. I know Coach Vince was looking at the initial balance. You might have heard Hoag talk about the initial balance also. Initial balance low. Nope, that wasn't IB low. I think once we started to get back inside the initial balance, that's what Coach Vince was looking at. Coach Vince is going to be joining us, I believe, sometime next week. We got to confirm that, but we might have Coach Vince joining us for At the Buzzer. But I know I'm not sure where he got into the trade, but I know once we got back inside that initial balance, that was confirmation for Coach Vince to say, you know what, there's potential to reach the other side of the initial balance. Um, so really nice trade there as well. All right. Someone caught that trade after the earnings. That's a pretty good trade there. Pretty good trade there. All right. See where we are as far as higher time frame. Um, Still above the 200 moving average. S&Ps did not close above 6100, though we tested it. We closed pretty much right below it. We're still pretty close to all-time highs. Let's go out to a daily. You were looking for '07s, coach. Nice. Uh, we're still less than a point and a half, percent and a half away from all-time highs. Pretty big news catalyst tomorrow. A planned news catalyst. Who knows what's unplanned? But we have the potential to make a new all-time high if the markets like the NFP numbers, and there are no other headlines that scare the markets right now. But it looks like the rally is continuing for now. It looks like we're kind of in by the dip. But Coach Paul mentioned this yesterday as well. This was whatever news opened up last week. Uh, we're still within that range, right? So the markets have a decision to make. S&P has a decision to make about the 6100. The NASDAQ has a decision to make about uh, 21,760, which we closed above it on the daily here. So it looks pretty strong. All right. Let's see what else we have here. Let's go over to gold, which made a new all-time high yesterday. New all-time highs yesterday in gold, and we've seen gold do this before, where it makes a new all-time high and then sells off 50 points. Gold is getting a little bit extended here. We've had a pretty nice rally on the daily. We're getting away from this 200, the 20 moving average. We're getting a little bit extended. Traded above 21,900 yesterday and pulled off a little bit. Let's see. I would ask somebody if Coach Paul was here. You guys know exactly what I would ask him. What is this white line here, where we got a pullback in gold to that 200 moving average on the 30-minute chart, and a really nice bounce opportunity from there. I know Coach Hoop was short last night. Let's look at last night's open. Last night's open here in gold. Again, price leaves this range to the upside. And it was a decent long, right? Decent long opportunity. It wasn't the most convincing urgency trade, but if you go to ATR risk on a 30-minute, which I really like to do, especially for some of these overnight trades, where this range is small, two ATRs here would have been 10 points, and we can see how far 10 points is out of the way. I don't think you get a 2-to-1 here, but you know, if you manage your trades, you can see some profits from it, right? We can have expectations for where the market is going to go, but ultimately we have to read where the market is going and see how we go from there. But decent opportunity, again, wasn't the most convincing. So when you get that, you have to manage accordingly. Uh, and then the sell-off. Shout out to Coach Hoop. Was calling out this sell-off. Really nice sell. We saw it. The markets during the New York session test down to that 200 moving average and bounce. Gold is still rallying, but again, getting a little extended. $2,900 is a major level, making new all-time highs. Not a market that if I'm short, I want to be short for a very long time. Um, but there are definitely opportunities on both sides. Definitely opportunities on both sides in gold. All right, let's move over to crude oil, which has been pretty crazy. I actually did take a crude oil trade today. In my XFA was the biggest P&L wise trade that I had today, but I don't think it was a great trade to be honest. It was right after a headline, right after whatever this headline was. Kind of saw the volume coming in really quick and just took a part of it. But why I want to bring up crude oil, uh, I know Anne Marie sent me a message yesterday when I was trying to buy crude, and she was like, "Hey, all of the news about crude oil is negative." It was almost just like, "Hey, stop buying it." But she said it the Anne Marie way. It was just like, "Hey, do what you want, but Crude is the news in Crude is negative." I know she was talking about it on Topstep TV today as well, and we've been talking about this pattern, right? We're under the 200 moving average on the 30-minute chart. The markets have just been selling off every time we get a look above the 50 moving average, which is this purple line. We start to sell off, and no difference here, right? Crude is just continuing this pattern. I don't know where the lows are. I know Anne Marie, I heard her talking about another $3 from here, which is 67. Which, if we look at a higher time frame chart, makes some sense to me, right? Where we kind of saw that breakout in December. Uh, I took a long here, but it was a quick scalp off of that volume, that volatility. Um, but definitely a see profit, take profit trade because if we look at crude on a shorter time frame, if you're waiting for some of these pull-ups to get short, I think those are trades that are a little bit more comfortable holding. I got into this long after I saw this volume spike. I think I was in at 25. In at 25, we had this opening range here. This is the 3-minute opening range in crude. In at 25, VWAP's down here, so I know I'm against the trend. As soon as we check into this, I think I took 30 ticks and just got out of the trade. Uh, right, where I'm not going to hold on to a trade. That's the way I'm trading crude right now. If I'm taking longs, in pretty much any market, right? Unless it's in one of the ags, um, it's see profit, take profit. Unless we get a trade like we did in the Nasdaq, right? We can see talk about volume and the sustainability of volume. Here is a volume spike based on news out of Iran. The average is on a 3-minute chart 2.5K. This candle is 9K. It's 3.25 times, three and a quarter times bigger than the average. Hopefully, I didn't get that math wrong. Shout out to public school. But if we frame out that handle and attach VWAP to it, we get the same trade to the other side, right? Once we get a close outside of here, right? This is that J trade to the other side. We get a close outside. It's not the most convincing, holding under VWAP, but if I can get short here, it's 30 tick stop. It's $300 on a mini, but you could trade micros as well to limit that risk. You could go to the other side, but you didn't even need all of that risk. And two ATRs would have been up here, right around 46. So decent opportunity on both sides. Probably better to the short side because you're with the higher time frame trend. For whatever reason, I keep looking at crude and wanting to buy it. Um, I said it on Topstep TV the other day, but I've been watching Landman, and he said their job is to keep crude between $72 and $78, and maybe that number is stuck in my head. Um, but if the market's not going to trade above there, then I'm not going to fight it. Uh, any questions on crude? It hasn't been the cleanest. I know I'm going to pull up another energy market. We have RBOB here, which D has said she's been trading. Let's just take a look at it. I haven't really looked at an RBOB chart. Oh, what's that white line up here, though? I know D was long here, which is a really nice trade. Hmm, this is interesting. It looks pretty flat, right? Or range bound on this 30-minute chart, but decent opportunities, right? Where if this 200 moving average is flat with extensions above it, we can trade the reversions, and then the same thing to the downside, right? If we get too far away on the downside, then we revert back to that 200 moving average, and that's been happening for a little while now. So I haven't traded it much, RBOB, but interesting market there for sure. Do we go through all of our big four? I think we did. We did. I'm gonna pull up a couple of charts that I know Coach Paul has been trading. Um, we talked about the yen yesterday, but I'm gonna pull up. Actually, let's pull up cattle. Let's pull up cattle. This was a pretty straightforward one, and this has been happening in a lot of the agricultural markets. So we're actually going to go through those. Part of the reason I didn't trade the equities in the morning was looking at the pattern of agricultural markets setting up these trades early on, right? I will look at I'm always going to look at the equities when the equity open happens, right? Because if we get an urgency trade in the equities, I'd probably much rather trade it in the equities than in one of the ags, right? But if it doesn't give me the setup, then I want to try to find the market that is, right? So the urgency trade that I'm talking about, opening range breakout trade, of course. Here it is. So I have a cattle chart up. It's on the bottom right of my screen. Of course, NASDAQ, ES get the prime real estate, but I have this on here because I want to say, hey, if this is the one that's going to do it, I want to take this short. So um, the trade was, and like I said, I short armed this one. The trade was I got short here. Actually, I was using a 1 minute opening range um, on the ags, and this is just a suggestion from Coach Paul using a 1 minute opening range on the ags. We see volume leaving the range. I got short here at 350s. And like the Nasdaq, I probably should have held on to this trade, right? And I shouldn't say that. Should have, would have, could have, right? But I could have, right? There was really no technical reason to get out of this. And just so everybody knows, this move here from where I got in to this lows, to these lows here, that is about a $1,500 move, um, where the market moved in one direction. Now there are no micros in uh, cattle, right? We can't trade mini cows, but or micro cows, but there's a ton of opportunity here, right? And your risk was if you went all the way on the other side of the opening range, your risk was about 350, right? To make, and I'm not trying to catch the lows, but uh, you know, anyone here comfortable taking 40 to 70% of a $1,500 move, and it was in one direction, right? Not a lot of indecision here, and some of the same stuff you know, we look at applies here as well. Here's high volume spike, and we got another one after it. Actually, this is a 1 minute chart. That's why we don't look at 1 minute charts. They give you false signals. Uh, they give me false signals. Here it is on a 3 minute. Here's that 3 minute chart. Held 50% of this high volume. VWAP is lower. So even if you miss this high volume spike, notice I'm not quoting prices here. I'm just looking at the structure and the volume. High volume spike. I don't know what price cattle is trading, but there's volume in a market. It's moving. And if you miss the initial move, here's another opportunity here for another sell. And we can see the market respecting this volume where it gave you a couple of opportunities at that 50% of that range to sell. So shout out to you, Coach Hoop. Um, I know you've been talking about the ags in the Topstep TV chat. And the shout out to Coach Paul, who's been talking about corn. We're going to pull up a corn chart as well. Just want to let everybody know there are other markets to trade. There's a lot of anxiety that happens or maybe not. Maybe you're completely comfortable trading the equities when they open, and sometimes I am, but it has to be a clean trade, right? I don't care about the market. I want a clean trade. So I'm going to go over to. They have mini Highland cattle. I don't think we could trade it with Top Step accounts. But here's corn, right? Corn. We've heard Coach Paul talk about corn for a little while and the rally that we've seen in corn all year. Here it is on a 30-minute chart. And again, what is that white line? The 200 moving average. We're looking at a 30-minute chart here. Andrew says the moo is the most important number for cattle every day. Uh, but that 200 moving average on a 30-minute chart in corn starting to flatten out a little bit, right? We can see it earlier last year. We have a little bit of a rally, but this 200 moving average is starting to flatten out. Maybe we'll see a couple more tests of it. Uh, but a nice area on a shorter time frame, right? If we go back down to a 3 minute, gave us a nice short opportunity here early on. Anytime you're taking your trades, maybe you do look at multiple time frames to see to get an area, maybe an area, potential area for a target, or to get out of your trade, or maybe you're looking for this, saying, hey, in the higher time frame, this market is moving to the upside, and that 200 moving average is my area to get into a long, which neither one is wrong, right? You can make, especially today in corn, we don't really see corn be a two-sided market most days, but there was money to be made to the short side. This is about a $400 move in corn to the downside, and then a complete reversal of it to the upside, where again we see high volume into these lows. Does that volume sustain? It actually just completely turned around and went the other way. Um, but really nice opportunity. We can see as the market comes back down and it respects these levels where that volume stopped, and just another really nice opportunity here. Uh, we're a ton of trades out there today. A ton of trades out there today. And again, we said it yesterday. Um, you know, I don't want anybody here scanning 35 markets to trade. The most I'm gonna have up at one time is 8, and usually it's 4. Um, but if you're struggling in the equities, um, especially in the open, like I said, that NASDAQ trade was the one NASDAQ trade I took all day, and it was in the last 2 hours of the session. Um, Giraffes are cows with long necks. Wow, I did not know that. Um, and here I was struggling with selections. Yeah, I have 8 markets. I'm never going to trade all 8 markets in a day. But today I took trades in crude, cattle, and the NASDAQ. Um, I had 8. I don't need to trade all 8. And usually what happens is as soon as that cattle trade set up, I stopped looking at the NASDAQ, right? I could almost go full screen to one chart until this trade stops playing out. Din Din, you move from NQ to ES. Nice. Can you explain Dakota's 3-bar reversal strategy you mentioned yesterday in slow markets? He's just looking for 3-bar reversals, right? He's looking for support and resistance at higher time frame levels on a on a hourly or daily chart, looking for support and resistance, and then he's looking on a shorter time frame to get a 3-bar reversal at that level to then take a trade. Um, if you have more questions about it, ask him on slow markets tonight, right? Slow markets tonight, he can explain it. He explains it all the time. But higher time frame, he's looking for levels, getting prices, and then on a shorter time frame, he's looking for the reversal. Uh, he says nice selection for the day across different asset classes. Yeah, today was a nice one. Today was a nice one. I put up. I'm trying to remember what charts I had up this morning. I had the Dow, Nasdaq, ES, gold, crude, cattle, natural gas. There was one more. I can't remember what that last one was. But all markets that have been presenting opportunities. But I'm only one person, right? I can't trade them all, but it's decent to look at. Here's wheat futures, biggest percentage mover on the day. Shout out to Ryan, caught this trade. Uh, so there is a ton of opportunity out there. I cannot finish this class without bringing up Japanese yen. Uh, got you, Coach Paul. I'm gonna do that next. So Japanese yen, we heard Coach Paul say this was on his scouting report yesterday. Um, we have this 200 moving average up there, and it's starting to look more and more like a target. This is on a daily. Of course, anything can and will happen. But if we look at a 30-minute chart, this market is starting to break out, right? We had a little bit of consolidation around this 200 moving average. We're starting to kind of flatten out, even out a little bit here, get some separation between the 20, 50, and 200. Um, and this is what it looks like when markets rally. Now, here is last night's open. Uh, Here's last night's open. We attach a VWAP to that. Wasn't the most convincing long. Um, wasn't the most convincing long, but a long nonetheless, right? 2 ATR stop. Let's go with 2 ATRs. 87. You would have got stopped out here if you held this, right? Let's say you got long right here. You had a 2 to 1, or close to a 2 to 1. And if you held it, you got stopped out. But there was another opportunity to get into this trade later in the day. And Coach Paul and I were talking in Discord. I'm like, the yen looks like it wants to be the star of the show today. Again, while everyone was talking about the equities chopping around, this is 12 p.m. Eastern time. Really nice continuation rally here. So there are other markets out there. Don't look for them all, but just know that they're out there. Uh, Micro Bitcoin, 30-minute chart. Uh, what more is there to say? What is that white line, chat? Here's our open. Here's our open from yesterday. Nice, urgent, decent, not really urgent, right? Not the most urgent long ever. Um, maybe if we looked at a shorter time frame, it was a little cleaner. Um, but right up to that 200 moving average, micro Bitcoin has been in somewhat of a downtrend over the last couple of days, hanging out. It almost looks like that crude chart, right? Every time we get above the 50 moving average on the 30-minute or up to that 200, we get a rejection. Uh, and all of this now is happening below that 100,000 level, which is a major psych level for uh, Bitcoin, right? That 200 moving average on the 30-minute is now below it. Beautiful rejections here. This is right before the New York session open, but even on the equity open, we get a test of it. Man, there's a lot of good trading happening right now. Right now, if you find that you're struggling in the equities, I'm not saying jump to something else right away, but scan a little bit. Right when you're doing some chart review, scan around and see if there was anything that is presenting your setups to you. We try to do our best to talk about what has the potential to trend, but of course we don't know anything, right? So you go with a hypothesis and then you just have to test it out and see if it's presenting anything to you. But really nice micro Bitcoin trade here on a shorter time frame. If we look at the equity open, uh, anchor a view up to the first candle that touched the 200 SMA. His Royal says adapt, adapt, adapt. That's what we got to do. First candle that touched the 200 SMA right there. Actually, first one that touched it, I guess, is this one. And from the time we tested that, man, it's a beautiful trade. That is a beautiful trade. Let's say you got short here, and these are micro Bitcoins, and you got short here. Your stop would have been about 900 points or $900. Your stop's way up here, and that's with a micro. You're way out of the way. You got a 2-to-1, a 3-to-1, a 4-to-1, a 5-to-1, a 6-to-1. If you wanted it, if you could hold that long, right now it's a long trade. Not being naive, very, that's an 8-hour hold. But once we got up there and rejected from that 200 moving average, there was really no price action to the upside. Super Bowl always seems like a catalyst. It might be. It might be. Uh, it might be. But really nice there, coach. Um, anyone trade micro Bitcoin here? Any micro Bitcoin traders in the chat? I don't think so. I don't think so. All right. But anything else? Eagles are green and the Chiefs are red. Which way do we go? uh, I had to put a bet on it. I'm betting on the Eagles. Betting on the Eagles. Sorry for all of our Kansas City folks out there, but fly Eagles, fly. Any other questions you guys have, let me know. I think I went over all the markets that I wanted to go over. We went over a bunch of them. Again, there's a ton of opportunity out there. You do not have to try to catch everything. And in the example of the NASDAQ, like we talked about earlier, if the price action isn't favorable to your setups, you don't have to trade until it is, right? The great thing about us being day traders, we do not have to be in the markets. It might feel frustrating. And Coach Paul and I were talking about that a little bit earlier today. A lot of the mistakes that we make or bad trades come out of frustration where I sit at the market, I sit at the charts every day. I get here at 9:30 Eastern, and after 4 hours, if I haven't made a decision or if I haven't seen anything clean, it's easy, and I'm saying this myself as well, it's easy to just jump into something because I feel like I haven't done anything. Um, be conscious of that, right? If the first hour of price action isn't favorable to you, get up from your desk and at least walk away for 5 minutes. Hopefully, if I say that, you don't miss the best trade of your life in that 5 minutes, but it'll take you out of the tunnel vision of trying to make something happen. Um, and if that does happen, I'm sorry. Uh, it happens to me a decent amount actually, where um, I feel like anytime I start a class, when the every time I start a class and I'm looking at the markets, as soon as I start the class, the markets move really well. Or if I'm in the Discord chat and I'm like, hey guys, I'm gonna walk away from the day, I'm not seeing anything. As soon as I walk away, the markets move. So hopefully that doesn't happen for you. But if you're sitting here staring at an opportunity to happen, you're going to start convincing yourself of something to happen instead of just stepping away, saying, "Okay, I'll come back, take a deep breath, see things clearly." Um, Frustration is the ultimate account killer, 100%, 100%. I noticed a lot of price movement during the Asia session. Is that affected by the 24-hour stock market? I don't think so. I think it's, traders in Asia trading. You know, the especially futures markets, they're 23.6, right? 23.6, 23.5. One of those two. 23.5. Uh, so, there's traders all over the place, right? All over the world, and trading. And during that Asian session, Asia London session, it's not as much volume uh, as the New York session, but the markets are still going to move. Have you ever thrown a shoe? I've thrown a mouse. I've thrown a keyboard. I've thrown my hat. The hat is easy because you just like, and you throw it. That one is kind of easy. I had the opposite with CL last year. Asia would move it, and I come into NYMEX to watch it ping a 50 tick. Yeah, yeah. Crude was tough last year. Crude was tough last year. AB the Don says, hit that like button. Appreciate your help. AB, appreciate you joining. See your name in the chat all the time. Appreciate you all joining here. If you haven't done so already, hit that like button. Let me see if I'm missing any other questions. If not, we'll go ahead and get out of here. Where do you get your ATR? ATR indicator right here. It's just on the bottom. I have it minimized because I don't care about the line. I just want to know the number for when I'm taking a trade. Yeah, wireless mouse, they fly pretty easily. Uh, Steven, I don't do one-on-ones. All my coaching is done at Topstep. I think that might be it. I think that might be it. Anyone know how to fix the DOM not changing the market when I change it to the chart? Make sure they're linked. You have to have a link on the chart and then a link on the DOM. Just make sure they're the same color. How strong is the correlation between ES and gold? Are they always negatively interlinked? I actually don't know that answer to that question. I think that's a better Hoag question, maybe. Hoag has this link to this website. I can't remember what it is, but it shows all the market correlations. All right, NFP tomorrow. NFP tomorrow. Can somebody remind me when the last NFP day was? And we'll take a look at that and then we'll wrap it up here. It's usually the first Friday of every month, right? First Friday of every month. In January, that would have been the third, unless they moved it because of New Year's. Anybody remember what day that was? Take a quick look before we go. Did I close the chat? January 3rd. Okay, perfect. So January 3rd, we have NFP out tomorrow, right? Biggest news of the week. Here is, was it January 3rd? I'm not seeing much of a reaction to it. I know it was, I felt like it was moved. I felt like it was moved because it was the beginning of the year. Andrew said January 10th. That might make a little bit more. Yeah, here we go. Okay. It was January 10th. Yeah, they had to move it because of the start of the year. Okay, here's that NFP candle on the NASDAQ. This candle in a 3-minute period is 250 points. Does anyone here have a 250 point risk built into their trading plan? I don't. I definitely don't. Right. So we do not have to trade in this candle in order to make decent money for the day, in order to make decent trades for the day. Wait for this dust to settle and trade from there. The same thing you guys see me do with high volume candles that happen randomly during the day. The great thing about this one is this is not random. So I know that there's the potential for a trade opportunity here based on the reaction to this candle. Now I anchor VWAP to it and we see the market this way, right? So I see heavy tilt to the downside, but not leaving the range yet, pretty big range. Is there an opportunity for a scalp long here? Potentially, right? But maybe you don't want to trade 6 minutes after the print, right? So now I can wait, get a little bit more data, starting to hold that VWAP, right, as a potential short, right? Still a lot of risk here, but I could trade micros. I'm looking somewhere near 50% of this candle. So I'll tell you guys exactly what I do. Sometimes I do take this long just for a quick scalp or whatever the opposite trade is, right? If it's to the there was one that was January 11th last year. Sorry, July 11th. Where we got a push to the upside, VWAP was still at the 50% of the candle, and I took the short. So sometimes I do take this, but it's a see profit, take profit trade. I'm not looking for this entire thing to fill here. But now, once it prints and the volume starts to die out, if I took the quick scalp, I'm not looking for 100 trades in this range. I'm looking for one quick trade. If it gives it to me, great. If it doesn't set up, then I'm going to wait until the New York session opens. We get the New York session open here. We have, since the news printed, volume is below the range. Our 3-minute opening range holds 50% of this. And now let's see if we get a trade. Now I want a short. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense, right? So this candle defines a range. If I get a quick scalp, good. That gives me a little bit of a buffer for the day. But then I'm going to wait for the New York session open and just see how the market, when a lot of volume comes in, responds to it and take my trade from there. Um, there we go, Billy. Planned volume. Planned volume. And we can see once that New York session opened, the market never traded above that price, above the high of that price, above 50% of that candle. Please don't rush. I just gave you a blueprint for how to trade it, not financial advice. For educational purposes only. Tomorrow is going to be as uncertain as any other NFP print has been. We'll see what the market's reaction to it is, but we don't have to guess where the market is going to go. There's opportunity to trade it outside of that. So, where would you enter, Kelvin? That is the question of the. I'll show you where I entered tomorrow if I take the trade, but I'm entering ideally somewhere against this VWAP. So for the long, like I said, there are times where I catch this long off the low. There are times where I don't. But if this candle checks below, doesn't continue, I might enter long somewhere around, 105 here. And I'm thinking profits as we get back to this VWAP. So that's a quick 40-point trade there. I might be out. I could be done for the day if I take 40 points on the NASDAQ. But once the New York session opens, here, sometimes I do take and Dakota said this before. He's like, do as I say, not as I do all the time. If you are earlier in your trading journey, I'm going to tell you to wait for VWAP to leave the range, come back, test here. So you should be entering here. Sometimes I enter up here, but sometimes this trade also continues and just, you know, goes against me completely, right? This is lower probability up here, higher probability as VWAP starts to go, right? So uh, if I take the trade tomorrow, I'll let you know. I'll show you guys the executions on it, and we'll go from there. But thank you everyone for joining. If you haven't done so already, hit that like button on the way out. Remember, Dakota has slow markets tonight at 7:30 Central Time. We have Coach Hoop doing classes in Discord, as well as Coach Ray and Coach Vince. 4:30, 6 p.m., and 7 p.m. Central Times. No London Open tomorrow because it is Friday. Um, but Deanna does that every Monday through Thursday, 3:30 a.m. Central Time. Nick for a tick with 6 p.m. or 5:45, 4:45 Central Time open. I think he's going earlier this week because of the Super Bowl, but Nick will talk to you about that. Tomorrow's Friday. If you had a good week, end it as a good week. If you didn't have a good week, you don't need to recover it tomorrow. Just take good trade setups, and we will talk to you then. Thanks, everyone. Bye.